Hello and welcome back to the Movie Memo Recaps. Today we are going to recap a 2019 movie named Cold Pursuit starring Liam Neeson. Keep alert, spoilers incoming. The movie opens in the town of Kihio with a snow-plowed driver named Nels Coxman. He returns home with his son named Kyle, where they meet his wife named Grace, who is preparing dinner. While having dinner, Coxman and Grace discuss about his upcoming event, and she advises him to speak less. She helps him with his dressing, and later we see Coxman being awarded Citizen of the Year basing on his services in Kihio. The scene jumps to Kihio Airport, where Kyle works as a cargo handler. Shortly he gets kidnapped by criminal enforcers who throw him into a van where another victim named Dante is also being held. The crooks inject a large dose of heroin into Kyle's body before Dante manages to free himself and run out of the van. One of them shoots after him, but Dante manages to get away. Later they bring Kyle's body to a public setting and make it look like he just passed out. Later on we see Grace looking for Coxman, and the two rush to the mortuary where they get informed of Kyle's death. The post-mortem report suggests that he died from heroin overdose, but Coxman gets confused, well knowing Kyle wasn't a junkie. Grace, however, takes the blame that they didn't give attention to their son, but later on proceed with the burial ceremony. We get introduced to a drug lord, Trevor Calcote aka Viking, as he observes that his son Ryan has a black eye. Viking instructs his son to hit his bully back, but Ryan thinks he would be just as dumb as the bully. Viking is then informed by his men that Dante escaped them. Coxman becomes distressed by the ordeal, hence going to his storage shed and grab a rifle. Bloody Dante is also hiding in the same spot and notice him. Coxman puts the barrel in his mouth, but before he pulls the trigger, Dante interrupts him. Dante reveals that Kyle knew nothing, hence Coxman forcing information out of him. He learns that Dante got involved with Viking's men and lost a bag of cocaine, which led to their capture and Kyle's murder. Dante gives up the name of one of the men involved in Kyle's murder, Speedo. Coxman moves to a nightclub where he was directed in pursuit of Speedo. Speedo gets called and the two move to the elevator where Coxman asks him if he knows Dante. Speedo pretends that he doesn't know about Dante, and Coxman asks him about Kyle, who he also pretends not knowing about. When Coxman demands to know what happened with Kyle and who ordered his murder, Speedo ignores Coxman and threatens him with his gun. Coxman attacks Speedo when he's not looking and beats his face to a pulp and then drag him to the back of a van. Coxman checks through his phone and asks him for an explanation on what happened. Before hitting him again, Speedo reveals that he was taking orders from Limbo. Coxman checks through his phone for Limbo's picture, and after confirming it he strangles Speedo to death and confirms he is not moving. He drives the body away and later wrap it in chicken wire and throw it down the gorge. When Coxman returns home, Grace is there, but she won't talk to him because of her distress. In the morning, Viking gets informed that Speedo is missing but takes it easy, hoping he would be back. While he escorts Ryan to school, he finds that one of his men packed cookies in his lunch, which Viking is strongly against as he wants to regulate his son's diet. Patrolling the town is Detective Kim Dash, who is new in town, and her partner Jip. Jip shows her Coxman and informs her that he is the Citizen of the Year. They catch some teens smoking a joint and Kim wants to arrest them, but Jip tells her to ease up since it's not that serious. With the faction growing between Coxman and Grace in the morning, he cuts his rifle short and ensure it fits in his coat. He goes to find Limbo at a wedding dress shop where he works. Limbo knows why Coxman is there and he tries to shoot him, but Coxman dodges the shot and fights Limbo until he knocks him down. Limbo confesses that he was instructed to kill Kyle and Dante by an enforcer known as Santa. He reveals that Santa works at the airport and gives him his description. Coxman shoots Limbo dead and takes his body to the gorge as well. Back home, Grace tries to ask him about Kyle's favorites, but notices that Coxman wasn't aware of it all, which makes her angry. Viking meets with his ex-wife Aya as they make arrangements for their sharing custody of Ryan. Viking shows her a list of the diet he wants to give Ryan, which Aya thinks is insane. Shortly, Viking gets informed that Limbo is also missing, making him increasingly angry. Ryan sits down with one of Viking's men and displays his wide knowledge and love of classic music. At the airport, Coxman spots Santa setting his car, and when he drives away, Coxman follows him to a snow-covered road. Santa notices the truck following him, but Coxman suddenly takes another route. Shortly, the truck appears in front of him, possibly blocking his path, and Coxman moves out to meet him. He informs him to step aside so that he passes first, but Santa attempts to bribe him. He hits him and tries to get more info out of him, but Santa says through the beatings that Coxman is wasting his time. The two of them have a laugh as Coxman admits to being tired of hitting Santa right before he shoots Santa in the head. He finds cocaine in his car and destroy it, and then plow his car off the road. Santa joins Speedo and Limbo at the bottom of the gorge as well. When Coxman goes home, he realizes that Grace has left him and left behind an empty letter. Coxman pays a visit to his brother Byron, who was once part of the criminal world, and informs him about Kyle's death. Byron's wife immediately dislikes Coxman, thinking he is part of the same crew Byron used to hang with. Byron makes a call and learns about the business that Kyle and Dante were involved in, and he tells Coxman about Viking and how dangerous he is. Coxman vows to kill them all and reveal how he has killed 3 of his men, a thing that surprises Byron, who underestimated his brother. Viking suspects the disappearances of his men are the work of an American Indian drug gang, of which their leader White Bull had made a compromise with Viking's own father when they took over the area on the reservation. With his cocaine missing, Viking orders 2 of his men to apprehend White Bull's son named Little Hawk. The men waits for Little Hawk at the airport and capture him. After beating Little Hawk senseless, he never tells them anything and Viking executes him. He has Little Hawk's body hung up by a sign near the reservation for his father to find, along with the shark tooth that White Bull gave Viking's father as a peace offering. After the burial ceremony, heartbroken, White Bull wants revenge against Viking, probably a son for a son. Detective Kim has learned from her ex-boyfriend that Little Hawk was son to White Bull and the war could be between Vikings and White Bull. The captain, however, ignores it, though Kim seems willing to do something about it, thinking that it might be territorial wars. Coxman visits Byron again for more information on how he can kill Viking, provided that Byron once worked with his father. With his gang named Wingman, Byron had a wide experience in the criminal world. Byron suggests to Coxman that he hire a hitman called the Eskimo to kill Viking. Coxman follows Byron's instructions on how to do business with the Eskimo, being that he must pick him up from a train station, take him to a motel, and pay half the money up front. When Coxman does all of that, the Eskimo suspects Coxman of being a cop, since cops do that half upfront deal instead of 2/3 upfront. Later, the Eskimo moves to Viking's place and explicitly informs him that he was paid $90,000 to kill him. He double-crosses Coxman and requests $90,000 from Viking in exchange for who wants him dead, even though his thoughts are on the Indians. After transferring the funds to his account, the Eskimo reveals to him the name Coxman, and the crooks believe Coxman is Byron as they remember him as Wingman. Viking, however, feels disappointed with the Eskimo for betraying a person that paid him to carry out a job. With his failure to honor his code, Viking has his men kill the Eskimo, terming him unprofessional. Coxman checks on Viking and realizes that he is still alive, yet he hasn't heard from the Eskimo. Viking and 2 of his men drive to Byron's home and pick him up. They still think he was the one who sent the Eskimo after him. Byron knows what is going to happen, but since he is already suffering from cancer, he could not care less that he is about to be murdered. He covers for Coxman, pretending to be the one that sent Eskimo and took Viking's cocaine. Viking respects Byron's spirit before he is executed. Coxman now later visits Byron's grave but spits on it and walks away with her luggage. Kim receives a call over the investigation into the case after gathering info from around town as well as an ex-boyfriend of hers. She learns that Kyle also died from an overdose, as well as the names of people involved in both Vikings and White Bull's operations. Coxman spares time to visit the graves of his son and brother and later head out to Viking's house. He manages to track Ryan's school from the sticker on the door. Viking meets with his men to find a solution on how to reconcile with White Bull after wrongfully killing his son. When one of his men jokes around, Viking shoots him dead out of anger. Viking attempts to pin the blame of Little Hawk's murder on the dead goon Dexter. Viking orders his men to decapitate him and bring the head to White Bull as an offering. He sends his man Sly to deliver the head and say that Dexter was the one who killed Little Hawk. White Bull is thankful for the offering, but he still demands a son for a son, and he kills Sly as well. Kim gets intel on the death of Dante, hence going to meet Coxman, thinking he is not informed. She tries questioning him if he knew anything about their death, but Coxman distances himself from everything. Cox's man has arrived at Ryan's school, though White Bull's men are also around in an attempt to kidnap Ryan. Cox's man catches wind of this and poses as someone working for Ryan's parents, and he picks him up from school. On seeing him, the men chase him through the streets, but given that Cox's man knew about them, he drives faster. He manages to lose their trail after they get blocked by a van. They report back to White Bull but promise to get the kid, but shortly Slice's phone rings. They answer it, and report his death and proceed to continue with the hunt. Viking has learned about Ryan's kidnap, which upsets him, though Aya also arrives shortly. She blames Viking, thinking he is the one that took him, yet it was her week of custody. She threatens to call police after 24 hours, but Viking promises her he would be around. Cox's man takes Ryan to his home and offer him a seat to prepare for him some eggs. The boy is not scared as Cox's man is friendly to him, and Ryan is already a good-natured kid. Cox's man puts Ryan to bed, but he asks Cox's man to tell him a story before he goes to sleep. He bonds with the boy better than his own father does, and after learning about his job, he requests for a drive in his truck. Viking's men bring in a janitor from Ryan's school who says he saw a man taking Ryan, and he mentions the name Cox's man. Viking makes it look like the men will give the janitor the money he was promised, but he just has his men kill him. White Bull and his men take time off to enjoy skiing, and some go for paragliding. Cox's man sets his gun ready and later call Viking, who are already going to his house without his consent. He gives him an appointment, but Viking and his men proceed to his house thinking he might be there. They find Ryan's bag inside, though on the other hand Cox's man is driving with Ryan. He meets the detectives, who reveal to him that they saw some cars around his house. Viking's men realize the truck company where Cox's man works and head out to go there. One of his men stays behind and double-crosses Viking by revealing his location to the Indians, given that Viking killed his best friend Dexter. Cox's man moves back to the company and hide Ryan somewhere and order him not to move after giving him headsets. Shortly when Viking and his men arrive, Cox's man gets a hiding spot in an attempt to kill Viking. While still looking for a perfect position, one of Viking's men find him and bring him out on gunpoint. Viking hits him and asks for Ryan's whereabouts, but Cox's man stays silent. Shortly he notices the Indians coming and divert Viking, telling that Ryan doesn't deserve him. The Indians arrive and engage in a shootout with Viking's men as Cox's man hides. Viking attempts to escape in his car, but Cox's man operates a machine to cut a tree and drive it through Viking's car. This leaves Viking trapped, and White Bull shoots Viking in the chest, leaving him helpless. Cox's man starts to leave, but White Bull forces him to let him join him. Later that night, Kim and Jip come across the scene. Viking is still alive until Jip finds him and he finally dies. Ryan then gets out and drives the snow plow away from the scene, and the officers must follow him. Cox's man and White Bull ride along the snowy roads as Cox's man just continues to do his job. While on the way, White Bull learns that Cox's man is not a threat, hence putting down his gun. He even gets time to sleep and later wake up when everything is still going well. White Bull's last surviving man avalanches paragliding and accidentally flies into the path of the snow plow, causing him to get shredded, bringing the movie to the end. Thanks for watching. If you are new, don't forget to subscribe for more of these recaps. Until next time, have a nice day.